I think the people who need to do that survey should be the IESG or the IAB in terms of the number of people who return. And this is a question that is posted on a Facebook post, given your earlier presentation with respect to...
I'm scared. Is this on my Facebook page?
It should be on your Facebook. No, I'm not sure whether it shows up on your Facebook, but it shows because he posted it, and it shows up on my Facebook page. So it's a question from Mikael Abrahamson from Deutsche Telecom. And the question is to Andrew, would you care to comment on why you're going the NAT 64 plus 464 XLAT route? On most fixed line deployment, people are doing MAP or DS Lite.
Wow. Firstly, at this point, I'm not going to get into that technically. But to the guy who asked that question, contact me offline and we can have this debate. But what I will say about that question is thank you very much for the question, because it illustrates a point. 20 plus transition mechanisms. We can't even agree which one to use. I have heard the DS Lite argument, and it comes out of one vendor, and you've got the NAT 64 coming out of another vendor. These things are again vendor interests. If I look at what happened in certain people who now work for other organizations in one particular vendor, there was a particular guy who said, we don't need V6, we're going to concentrate on carrier-grade NAT, etc., etc. And, well, as a result, that particular vendor fell very far behind. Another vendor said, we want DS Lite. Another vendor said, well, NAT 64 makes more sense. Again, this comes down to the fact that everybody's got different views and the mechanisms work equally well. I'm not sure that I agree that most people are going DS Lite. I'd need to see objective figures to actually see that. I know a lot of people who are concentrating on the NAT 64 464 XLAT route, and I've seen it on the V6 providers list. People are using it. There's no question about it. So we also need to be very careful about generalizations like that. As to the actual technology choice, that's a long, long discussion, and I'm quite prepared to have it offline, but I don't think we've got the time to get into it. But I would say, choose the translation mechanism that is easiest and works best for you. We've been through enough in this industry with operating system religion, with IGP religion, with vendor religion. We do not need to get into transition mechanism religion. Please. Let's avoid that.
We already went there, don't worry.
Mark, do you want to add anything?
Not my interest.
You're staying out of the war.
That was a question, comment.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I hope what I'm going to ask, it's not necessarily been covered, but it's in relation to the IETF. It has been indicated that there is low representation of the African continent within the IETF. But we understand that there's a lot of cost implications in terms of local people being able to attend, which is one of the limiting factors resulting in that lack of participation within the IETF. Because for one, they want a certain level of skills, which are highly technical. But now, since we are working within the IG ecosystem, we're talking about a multi-stakeholder approach, not necessarily focusing on only technical people, policy-making people, business, government. They should also get a fair chance of participating. But the limitation, as I've said, is the cost of participation. Is there any way that these underrepresented regions can be supported to actually participate within the IETF? Because it's a discussion that has been going on within ISOC, but ISOC on its own, I don't think it can actually cover the entire region. We need to see different people playing a role in ensuring that underrepresented regions are able to make it to the IETF, because once that happens, It's easy for them to share information and make sure that there is greater participation, be it mailing list, but the actual on-site participation, it's much powerful as opposed to this long-distance online type of participation, whereas you get limited exposure into what is going on within the IETF. Thanks.
Thanks, Dato. Let me answer that one quickly. So, IETF participation from the region, yes, it is very, there are costs involved, going to the IETF meeting. And for Africa, there's a fellowship program that ISOC has been running for the past couple of years. We still run it. And we've had we've had fellows who've gone and actually done very good levels of participation at the IETF. People who've actually gone and actually produced RFC documents at the IETF. However, there's a challenge with fellowships. Fellowships can only send so many people to an IETF meeting. It's something that does not scale in the long run. To give you an example, per year, I would say the fellows we're able to send is about maybe from the Africa region, maybe 5, 6, 7. What you're trying to do with the initiative, Africa IETF initiative, is to encourage other organizations, academia, ISPs, and so on, to also take up the role of sending a few people to the IETF. For example, Liquid, a big ISP, they could probably afford to send a few people to the IETF.
I want to comment on this briefly.
Before you do, let me finish and answer the question. Academia, the research education networks, they could probably have a budget to send people to the IETF. In Brazil, there is a task force there for advising the government about issues around the technology and the internet. They put aside a budget for academia to send professors to the IETF to keep the government informed about the IETF and the standards that are coming out, that sort of thing. So in the region, this Africa region in particular, participation is low, awareness is also low. That's another problem. Participation is low because of, people can't go there. Awareness is also low. People don't even know that you can actually join a working group today and start being active on the mailings, or even just do something like an IETF viewing hub, whereby you just sit down in a room like this and follow what's going on at the IETF. So I'll quickly close on this and say we have a mailing list called IETF Africa mailing list. You can join. We're trying to get more people involved, get more people, informed about what the IETF is, get more people around, participating around the IETF. We held a hackathon in Nairobi. Hackathon was just a room like this where we did something around the IETF. It's beginning to take more traction. So it's something we're trying to address.
I want to say this as well, though. So firstly, an ISP is probably going to be sending their own people if they're going to be sending anyone, so you've got to convince them to do that first. And in large companies, a lot of the people are involved in doing R&D, a lot of it, and feeding it back, again, through the vendors. So that is happening. They're not, and that expense is rather being funneled into the actual R&D inside the organization. The other thing is that with regards to African ISPs that are not sending their people because they don't have money, I'm about to get a little bit controversial here. Here's a fact.
Again?
The bandwidth costs in Africa are some of the highest in the world. The margins being made by some of these ISPs selling that bandwidth are some of the highest in the world. When you go to London and Hurricane Electric is selling transit for 10 cents a meg, but I'm seeing bandwidth being sold in certain countries on this continent for in excess of $900 a meg, and people are still buying it, for those ISPs to turn around and go, we don't have our money to send people to the IETF, sorry, I don't buy it. I'm sorry, I simply do not buy that argument. Because the fact is there are plenty of ISPs out there that are making plenty of money. I get it for the students. I get it for the people on the ground. But I don't get it for the ISPs that want to make that claim while charging what they're charging.
Good point. First Alan, then Moko.
Yeah, hi, this is Alan Barrett. I would like to distinguish between participating in the IETF and attending the IETF. You can participate on the mailing lists without attending. There's really very little barrier to that. If there's some technology whose development or standardization that you care about, then find the right mailing list, subscribe to it, read it all, and if you have input, then contribute. You do not need to spend money in travel. And in fact, I would recommend that you don't spend money in travel until after you've already spent 6 months or a year participating in the mailing lists.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks. Actually, what I was going to say is exactly along the same lines, because quite frankly, if you look on the basis of a return on investment, if an operator on this continent has $5,000 to send people to go and scale up, I don't think an IETF event for the very first time is the best use of those funds. And quite frankly, if you step into an IETF and you have not been following the mailing list for at least 3 months, you are going to waste time. We should go into, quite frankly, I hope you guys are taking that into your fellowships selection process. If someone hasn't been on that mailing list for at least a certain period of time, they're just going to waste time. Because first time you step on an IETF, you're drinking from a hose. You are not going to learn anything. You don't go to the IETF to learn. And so if you haven't built the intellectual foundations for long before, you can't do anything at IETF. Yeah. And then secondly, one of the things that really caught my attention was like recently when the Kenyan Supreme Court said, we are overturning elections, and all the international observers, everything was cool and fine and free and fair. We've got to ask the question, is this so we have to be part of the IETF, something that is going to be beneficial for the continent now? Or is it simply because we are being told that we need to be part of it? I think that's a conversation we should have. Otherwise, we are not, commanders of our own futures. Now, to be fair, it is important, and I think for every person, even if someone is willing to pay the bills for you to go to the IETF, until you find something beneficial personally to continue going to the IETF, it's simply going to be, let me go and take a vacation. And I'll give you an example. I did not have the interest to continue going to an IETF until, when we started creating Afrinics training program, we would create, training materials based on vendor white papers and textbooks. And then when we went out into the field, we see conflicts because, it's a vendor's thing. It's a vendor's perspective. And then when we rewrote it, version 2, we decided to go to the center line. Those were RFCs. It was only after that I went to the IETF for my first time. And then it was immediately beneficial because I could have people guide me on what that center line was. And also because we knew what that center line was, I know I and my team, we regularly are on the mailing list. So unless there is some personal interest, and which most of the time I really don't see for most guys who are around here, it's just not sustainable. So the question is this something that we need to do as Africans right now?
Okay, so let me start first with your first point, fellowships. I'm on the fellowship committee selection for the Africa region. If you apply and you do not prove that you've been on any of the mailing lists, you're out immediately. That's like one of the first criteria we check. Which mailing list you have to show which mailing list that you're signed up to, and at least you've been there for some time. That's the first thing. Second, to your point about is it something we need now? Let me give you a small story. I went to an IETF meeting recently, I won't say which one, and I met some of the guys working on a protocol. And the protocol they're defining was based or pegged on the fact that an internet user will be no more than 2 hops away from the content. Now, for the Africa region, we know that's not possible. How many hops does it take before we get to Europe? I don't know, 6, 7 hops maybe, before you get to something on the other side.
Depends where you are. Mombasa, 2.
Not everyone is in Mombasa. Not everyone is in Mombasa. But the point is, it's something that would work in that region. It's not something that would work, if that protocol, whatever it is, or whatever app will run on that, it's not something that would be useful for us in this region. So when you go for these ITF meetings, they ask, where are the Africans? We don't have the voice of the people from the region, and it boils down to participation. Not many people go because it's expensive to go. Some people, the people who should be going, like the people who work at the ISPs and the NOGs, and sorry, not the NOGs, the NRENs and so on, they don't go because they're not aware that they can actually put in a voice and say, okay, what you're proposing is actually not good for reason A, B, C, D. So that's what we're doing right now. Now, ITF is not for everyone, okay? We're not saying if you're doing, studies on this, you can just show up to the IETF and contribute. No. The plan of the objective of this initiative is long-term. It's not something that will help the region today, but it will help the region in 5-10 years when these protocols that are being thought of today are actually, for example, IPv6 is, when was IPv6 produced? What, 88, 89? 10, 15, 20 years is when now it's now a really big deal. But as an ITF, RFC, document production, it's produced way, long ago. So the internet of tomorrow, the next 5-10 years, is being designed now. So if we don't make the right noise to the right people to make the awareness known, we might be left back at the region, which is why there's an initiative. And I believe some of you on the list, please join the list, add people, make people more aware to the problem and get the awareness. That's what we're trying to say.
I will just ask you this. The internet of tomorrow is being designed today. Is it really being designed in the IETF? Or is it being designed in the labs of the big operators and the labs of the vendors? I had a vendor who told me the other day that I shouldn't bother asking for alpha and beta code to test new stuff because all the new features were dictated by the top 25 top 25 customers, and well, I wasn't one of them. That's what they said to me, to my face. Yeah, it didn't go so well for them, but that's the attitude. And, as Mukum said, when somebody goes to the IETF, if people have got to choose how they spend money, if you've got a guy like yourself or myself or some of the really technically clued up people in this room, great, send them to the IETF. But the younger guys, the guys who need to learn, rather than spending the $5,000 sending someone to an IETF, go and buy a lab router and let him play on it. Because he's going to learn and he's going to develop on that lab router. He can read the IETF on the mailing list and he can answer it. But don't waste the money on the travel budget because he's going to get lost and he's going to walk out of there with a week. A lab router is going to give him 2 or 3 years to learn. And then he can take everything from the mailing lists and apply it. But to send people over there who don't have lab equipment, who don't have an ability to sit and learn and play and test, that doesn't help anyone and it does this continent a disservice.
We've taken this conversation from IPv6 to ITF, but let me answer that. The reason that's not happening is going back to the awareness. The reason that young guy who's coming out from the university or college is not doing that and looking at mailing lists from the the working groups and trying to do something, he doesn't even know where all these things are coming from. The university curriculum that's being taught, and now we're really diverting, but the director of the Africa Regional Bureau, Dr. David Bekele, he's based in Addis, and he's actually trying to get universities to include IETF curriculum in university studies because it's not there. So it's a problem that's affecting, we're trying to solve the issue. We can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. That's why we're trying to get the help from the other regions. From the other parts. So I'm being told I have 5 minutes. Jan, please speak.
Hello, Jan here. I have a direct reply on your lab versus IETF thing. And yeah, I agree with you. I was born and raised in the operational waters. I spent 20 years in operations, building also labs and things like this. And kind of agree with you and to some extent disagree. Because me being a lab guy, I like to test and experiment on everything, on new technologies, new inventions, new stuff. And what I find quite useful at actually going to the IETF is you attend the working group sessions and then comes people with some presentations of how they would like to solve several problems, And the rule of thumb at the ITF is rough consensus and running code. So these people brings prototypes, running code to show that their idea would work. And I love listening to this stuff, and sometimes wondering on what kind of crack these people is. But then I have the opportunity to go and find these people in the hallways or ask the question on the mic and say, hey, can you please explain it a little bit more to me? Where is your code? How can I put it into my lab? How can I see if your thing actually works? How can I develop your idea? How can I help you? So this is maybe, and sometimes it becomes quite interesting, because you get to test stuff that, dude, you would not invent it if not smoking something really strong. But things works, right? Things works.
Thanks, Jan. I think now, just closing this ITF issue, and then I want to invite all of you to give closing remarks on the IPv6 thing. The mailing list is there. We're not saying that it's something that's going to be solved now, but it's something we need to talk about now. And I'm really happy to see that people are talking about the IETF in the region. This has not been the case for the past 2-3 years. And we've been talking to people about the IETF. This year we tried to change tack and try to do something about IETF. So we created a mailing list, we did the hackathons, we've talked to the NOGs, we've talked to the entrants. Interest is peaking, yeah. But we are fully aware that it's not something that's going to be done, this year, next year, and so on. It's a long-term plan, and it's not something that ISOC can do alone. No way. For example, the hackathon that we did, it was ISOC and Afrinic who managed to put that together. What I would like to see, and I think what's missing in the region, is when you go to an ITF meeting, yes, the vendors are there, the big boys are there, yeah? The vendors are there. But there are also people who come from, ISPs. They're running big boxes like you and, lots of switches and routers. They want to see certain features there. And they're there trying to make, their voices heard. I have not met, when we organize meetings like this, we call them Africa ITF meetings at the ITF, we only get about 10 Africans out of a total population of about, 1,500 people from the meeting. So there is a problem. And it's something that we're trying to solve. We need everyone's participations, everyone's, playing a part, raising their awareness. And I think it's in time we will see the benefits, but it's something we at least need to address now. So I hope we can close the ITF issue. Maybe we could continue that off list. I want to invite both of you to give closing remarks on IPv6, not ITF, on IPv6. What would be your message to the people in the region who have not yet moved on to IPv6? What would you tell them? Would you have someone here there? What would you tell them in terms of long-term planning for their business?
Okay, as a final comment, firstly, I would say stop treating IPv6 as something different. It's a part of the network. It just is. Start treating it that way. The same way you treat your IGP, your BGP, your actually no, forget your BGP, because I've seen how people treat BGP. But just generally as part of your network. And for those of you who don't want to move into today, and I'm not talking about the future because IPv6 is today and not the future, I say to you, in a year, 2 years, thank you for your customers. I will welcome them with open arms.
I was going to do something even shorter. I was just going to say 96 more bits, but there's no magic.
That's a good one. Okay. Any final questions from the audience, comments? Oh, Tato has something. Okay. I hope it's not ITF. ITF off list. We'll talk about ITF later.
I'm not expecting an answer, so you don't have to stress that much. I think for me, I don't think it's something else besides what you don't want to hear. I've heard everyone commenting around the IETF issue, and I agree with everyone, and it's not a problem with that. So the only thing I'd ask for consideration for those who are able to actually take it forward, it's that we have institutions. I'm just giving an example. like ICANN, for instance, which is a bit technical for a lot of people. It's very difficult to understand. But they make efforts to actually come locally to countries within the IGFs to make themselves known, which is a platform for people to actually get interest and start participating within, which is one of the strategies that I feel that can be deployed to enable people to actually start participating within. Because if we're talking about lack of participation, and on the other side, we're looking at low awareness. In order to improve on low awareness, we need to improve on participation. Because when you're talking about the ISPs, being able to attend the IETF, and then we need to look at the dynamics in terms of the type of companies that exist. Are they representative? The type of voices, are they representative of the region? Because the more we have diversity, I think it's the better, because it will be more inclusive for everyone. That's all. Thanks very much.
Megan, maybe the next ION should be on IETF only. Divert the topic. Okay. A lady, we must let her speak. We must let her speak. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Thembelishe from the Durban University of Technology. I'm an IT student. We were here to listen to everything that has been said, and we've learned a lot. I must say that half of the things that we've heard, some of us know nothing about. So just in short, if you can just advise us with regards to career paths, because in our field of study, we've been exposed to software development and touched a bit of in networks. So if you could advise us so that we could, next time we come to one of these conferences, we'd know what is being spoken about. Because we do know what IPv6 is, but we don't have a broad knowledge. We don't have broad knowledge of what it is about. So if you can advise us, like from where to from here, what field we can go into. Maybe if you can go into Cisco, N+.
Okay, so I'm going to give you an answer you're probably not expecting. And before I do that, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about me.
Okay.
I have no matric certificate. I left school when I was 16, and I walked out because I realized that I was never going to get taught what I wanted to know by anybody else. And I had to go out and get a head start on the experience. And what I found over the years is that to get that base knowledge, I don't want to say go Google it, because that's the wrong answer, but it comes very close. It's about reading, it's about research, it's about time, it's about effort. It's the 2 o'clock in the morning nights, it's the passion and the drive, because that's what keeps you in this industry. Yes, you can go and do a Cisco qualification and it'll give you the background. But here's something to realize about vendor certifications. You're not an engineer with vendor certifications. You're certified in syntax. A truly good engineer knows his protocols. He's gone on the internet and he's read and read and read.
Yeah.
He's used a Linux box, which you can get hold of anywhere, and Googled around for network simulation and then applied it and tried and read everything from the basics to the most advanced until he knows the protocols.
Yeah.
And then after that, your vendor certifications give you the syntax if you want it. But a true network engineer is not trained by a vendor. They're trained in the protocols and can use anything. So my advice is get on there and be prepared for long nights and just start reading and reading and reading. Don't wait for anybody else to give it to you, because they're not going to.
Okay, so Google must be my best friend.
Yes.
Thank you so
Mark, you want to say
I
anything,
just
or-
want to make a little tweak to your just Google it. It's just deploy 360 it. It's the
works
program
too.
that we're responsible for. So internetsociety.org/deploy 360 has a treasure trove of educational materials. So you can start there and then move to the Googs.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let me add one more thing. As the Internet Society, we do have a number of online courses that teach about networking, system administration, And they are fully online, and they also include hands-on online labs. So see me after this, and I'll give you, all the information you need about those. Okay.
And you can talk to me if you ever need lab stuff. I've got some stuff available, where we can help people out if they're looking to play with specific things.
Yeah, that's good. That's good here.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. I think the panel deserves a round of applause. Thank you very much for your time. I'll now hand over back to Megan.
And can you turn the projector?
And I have to run before to get to the airport.
Okay, we are done. Good job, everybody. You've made it to the end.